Devils make a sneaky good signing. Took a little bit longer than some of us may have expected, but Tom Fitzgerald finds a way to get it done. Implications here, let's break it down. Welcome to Devils Digest. Thanks for tuning in today. Hopefully you'll tune in for the rest of the summer and hit the subscribe button talking Devils hockey. So, headed into free agency yesterday, Tom Fitzgerald got a couple of internal and external things done. He locked Jake Allen up to a 5-year deal. Evgeny Dadonov and Connor Brown are here to help the bottom six. But going into free agency, we knew a couple things that we were going to need. Things that, we couldn't get away with. Things that were clearly holes last season. And one of those was our center depth. We really never figured out the third, fourth line center for the whole entire year. Whether it be injury, player not playing well, players going into slumps. It was kind of all over the place. Well, Tom Fitzgerald fixes one of those problems. Cody Glass, 2 years, $2.5 million AAV. Look, this was a little scary because I know that we remember Cody Glass wasn't going to be qualified originally, and then right before the deadline, they qualify him. So you kind of wonder, was that a little bit of a desperation type of move? Was that, trying to figure things out? Was Cody Glass maybe a little bit, not happy that the Devils waited that long? Were they trying to figure out a deal? Were they trying to buy more time to figure out a deal that works for both sides? Devils eventually came to terms with that. We can live with that. We can live with 2 years at $2.5 million. And when Glass came over here, he played pretty well with the Devils, especially in the beginning. Cooled off maybe a little bit toward the tail end, but he was being asked to do a little bit more than he should be. He is a bottom six player. Top 6 minutes doesn't make a ton of sense. I mean, that's just where he is at this point in his career. He was a former 6th overall pick and definitely has some skill to him. You can see why he went high in the draft, but never developed into those top 6 forward. And that's okay, because that's where he is at this point in his career. The Devils don't need him to do that this season. They're not going to need, those top 6 minutes from Cody Glass. Hopefully they're a little bit healthier. Maybe they're going to make another move. Nikolai Ehlers still isn't signed, but the Devils did have a need at depth center. They figure out one piece of the puzzle. Whether he's going to play third, fourth line, we'll see. I think he can handle both. I think it's more ideal to have him as your fourth line center because, depth, it's never a bad thing. I think Tom Fitzgerald has kind of proved that so far in free agency, signing guys like Evgeny Dadonov and Connor Brown. Both really good depth players. Connor Brown fits the Devils' core's style. Quick team, good in transition. Evgeny Dadonov is a skilled, very smart hockey player. Cody Glass kept playing the bottom 6. Like I said, we saw him play a little bit all over the place last season. Probably wasn't fair to him, but now third, fourth line center gets paid that type of money. I've said it before, I'm not big into paying players big contracts in your bottom 6. Low term, low money, that works. This contract works. Looking at his stats last year, 7 points in 14 games with the Devils. Clearly was playing a lot better than he was in Pittsburgh. He had 15 points in 51 games. Had a pretty nice Corsi of 53 with the Devils. So when he was on the ice, good things were happening for the most part. He was able to find a role with the Devils. They did use him all over the lineup, but this year it'll be strictly those bottom 6 minutes. Be that third, fourth line center that the Devils need, because they need both. But obviously they get one signed. Now, they still do need both. Free agency just opened up yesterday. Players have been taken, but it's not completely, off the table of them finding this center in free agency. Player that comes to mind, P.S. Suter. Like I said, I don't want to touch big money, big numbers, long-term deals. So if he says $5 million, I probably shy away. But he is a 20-goal scorer. He's found a way to be effective in this league after being undrafted. He's found a role in this league. Now, I don't see him as a top 6 player, But do I see him as a high-end third-line center? For sure. I think he can definitely fit that role. It's just going to depend on what he's going to cost. Who else is in on him? Does it become a bidding war? How many other teams are interested? He's a good hockey player, but you really have to think what you want to spend. If you maybe want to go a little bit cheaper, Jack Roslovic is also an option. 22 goals last year with Carolina. Has been in the Eastern Conference Finals the past 2 seasons. He has moved around a little bit. I don't know if you guys remember, but back in 2021, he was part of that Patrick Laine deal with Pierre-Luc Dubois. So he's been he was a high prospect at one point. Another player who's kind of figured themselves out in that bottom 6 role. Maybe definitely a little bit more of a realistic third line center than a player like Cody Glass. Cody Glass, great fourth line center. But if you can have a Jack Roslovic playing on your third line, that looks a little bit better. Question is, what does he want to sign for? I mean, he's still 28 years old. He still could do a prove-it-year deal. It still could be a 1-year deal. I mean, that's what he did last year with Carolina. Does he want to try it again? Does he like the money that's out there? Those are all things that have to be asked and things that we'll have to figure out, as free agency keeps rolling around. But Devils, I don't think are or shouldn't be, really can't be out of the depth center market. They do get one guy. They get him at the qualifying offer, 2 years, $2.5 million. And, overall, good deal. But then you look at the Devils cap situation. They still need that top 6 winger, and they still need either a third or fourth line center. And they have just over $6 million to work with. And they still need to sign Quinn Hughes. So their cap situation is not ideal. But when the cap is like that, and you have players on your team who maybe are underperforming, not playing up to their contract, it really does put more pressure to get those players, out of the system. And guys, talking about, obviously, I like him. Andre Palat, probably a player who they can become a little bit more aggressive with. He's got a high AAV. He just put in his 10-team trade list. Now, teams like the Rangers and the Flyers and Vegas are probably on that list, so making it a little bit smaller than 10. But that's a player the Devils could get a little bit more aggressive with. Player that, at the time the signing kind of needed to happen. They had to pivot back after Johnny Gaudreau signed in Columbus. So a player that probably at the time needed to happen, but doesn't seem to be needed as much anymore. Good playoff performer, but you can't be paying, the number that they're paying him when he's putting up, 20, maybe 30 points in a season. Those numbers just don't work. Erik Haula, down year, and probably in his tenure was better than Palat. They moved off of him. Maybe a little bit of an easier contract to move off of, but the Devils said, you know what? We're going to go in a different direction in our bottom 6. We like guys like Connor Brown and Evgeny Dadonov a little bit better at their number. So they move off of a guy like Erik Haula, bring those two in. Devils bottom 6, still crowded, but it has a little bit more of what that DNA of their core is. They're quick. They're good in transition. Physicality last offseason was important, but they still need that scoring. They still need to make what the Devils are. The Devils are a quick transitional team. Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier. Those guys are all in the transitional game. They're all quick. They're all good skaters. So Devils got a little bit more back to that this offseason. They went for the quick transitional game. Cody Glass, another one of those players who can play that style of hockey, has a pretty good Corsi. We'll see what else the Devils are going to do. $6.5 million. Still need to lock up Luke Hughes, I'd say long term, especially with where his brother is and his contract situation. I'd assume it's going to be long term. But the Devils, still a few things more to do. But Cody Glass, 2 years, 2.5. Let me know what you think in the comments. Would you rather see a PS Suter, Jack Roslovic, or do you have somebody else on your mind to fill that spot? Let me know. Let me know what you've thought so far this offseason, and I'll see you guys all really soon.